You're watching Public Comment every Thursdays at 8 a.m. The live stream. Detroit is different in Bridge Detroit. Local politics of Detroit. Welcome back to another episode of Public Comment. I'm Khary Frazier of Detroit is Different here, and we're talking about a lot of municipal politics. This is a show that's really anchored from one thing, and that is Malachi's weekly notebook that you can get at Bridge Detroit. Malachi, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Good to be back. Make sure to subscribe for that free newsletter every Wednesday morning.
Oh, most definitely. And along with Malachi, you need to know a lot about policy. We own everything. Tamesa, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Good morning. I'm happy to be here and ready to get started.
All right, so ready to get started. This week it's not going to be so heavy, but definitely something big in zoning came up, and we're going to explore that first. So in exploring, let's see.
Not a heavy week because the committees that are basically the first step for agenda items to get to the council were canceled last week as our council members were in Washington, D.C. for the Congressional Black Caucus. So a little bit of a lighter agenda this week. They're going to be back in business now, but basically had kind of a week where nothing really was able to move.
All right. With that, something did kind of come down, and that's the zoning reform for housing justice. We always speak about how difficult it is for people to find housing, but also, as we found out through an episode of Detroit Next, a whole episode about development and housing, is very difficult to build and create public housing. So this was very interesting as it was talking about different things you can do with lots, different things in connection to other dwellings that could be two-family flats, and just the building and development and cutting some of the red tape that does exist into the development, but especially when it comes to zoning. Malachi, you wrote this story. What was more information that you can share about this?
Yeah, so this is working its way through the process. We're recording this on Wednesday. I think it'll be out on Thursday. The Planning Commission this week is going to be holding a public hearing and then voting on whether to recommend its approval to the city council. And then the city council will also have to have a public hearing and vote on it. So we may not see action on this until later in October or even November. And even members of the mayor's administration were saying, it's going to be potentially a tight window to get these changes done before the legislative session ends at the end of November. But they're going to try because the goal here is to make it easier to put denser housing units in more zoning classifications across the city. Obviously, zoning districts decide what types of uses can be on the land. A lot of the changes here are aimed at the R2 zoning district, which is primarily for 1 or 2 family dwellings. Those make up about a quarter of all the lots in Detroit. It's one of the more common zoning designations, but a lot of the land that's zoned R2 is vacant right now. And part of that might be because it's difficult to build given the constraints of what's there. So one of the major things they want to do is allow townhouses, 3-unit buildings, 4-unit buildings as a by right use in R2 districts, which essentially means that you don't need to get any kind of special approval to, build up to a 4-unit building in those districts. Whereas before it was something that you would have to get, you'd have to go before the planning commission, get like a zoning variance and go through this whole rigmarole. It'll basically just unlock the ability for denser housing to be in, one of the most common zoning districts across the city, if that makes sense. And this is like, zoning can be kind of technical and boring, but the point is like it decides where you can do stuff in the city. So it's pretty impactful. One of the other major changes, and there's, a number of things in here. I'd recommend people go read the article because I have linked in there some of the documentation that you can, look through yourself if you're curious about the details. But one of the other major changes I'll just bring up is changes to parking requirements, which have been kind of frustrating for folks and a talking point among strong towns. Detroit is one of the nonprofits that's supporting this. So there's been kind of a group of like urban planners and like policy folks who have been talking about the impact that having, parking requirements, it makes it more difficult because it adds, space considerations where you're at, it adds more cost to have to build a certain number of lots, and we have an abundance of parking in Detroit already. So the idea here was to allow for fewer parking lot spaces for smaller buildings, multifamily dwellings, and pedestrian-oriented retail, service, or commercial uses near key transit lines. It also allows approval of an alternative parking plan for those similar kinds of spaces. And I guess another kind of interesting point on that, the DDOT director was asked to weigh in on this. And the Department of Transportation says that denser housing basically makes it easier for them to put better transit in place, because if you have more people living along, a street, it makes it more viable to have more transit there, more frequent service, because you have a larger base of people that are going to potentially rely on it. So the quote here from Robert Kramer is allowing for increased density, both of housing and amenities like retail along key transit corridors to make it more viable to operate bus rapid transit, increasing the number of passengers within walking distance of transit lines. So for folks that really want BRT, this is potentially a way to get that done too. Build more houses, get them closer together along key transit lines. So that's the gist, basically.
All right. With that, a lot in the policy when we think about zoning and shifting things around, because a lot of this does exist as quote unquote the red tape and the barriers of entry, because policy was written at one point in time that was, I guess, inflowing in response from not just, I would say, the politicians themselves, but residents usually support some of this. Tamesa, can you talk a little bit about a policy change in zoning, and what were the steps and the impact of something like this moving forward, as far as like taking away some of the, I guess, checks and balances in reference to that, and how that's going to be more important?
Yeah, so zoning is really important, right? It's one of those things that kind of has a strange legacy. It came out of it came from a long time ago when we were developing our neighborhoods and trying to make sure that that they look uniform and that the houses were, spaced apart enough and that they were farther enough back from the road. And so they're really all about, safety in that regard. But I like these changes because this is about our neighborhoods, right? When Malachi mentioned this, he talked about R2 zoning. R2 zoning is residential zoning. This is zoning that's going to be in our neighborhoods, in our places where we sort of live. This is not, when we talk about development in this context, we're not talking about downtown for the most part. We're not talking about, things like the Hudson site and those big developments. We're talking about R2 development that can bring homes to the vacant lots that are in our neighborhoods. As Malachi mentioned, a lot of the R2 zoning in the city of Detroit is vacant right now. And a lot of that is because of demolition. We've had a lot of vacant homes that have been demolished over the years because that they have been, vacant and, dangerous and things of that nature. And so now that they've been demolished, we have all of this vacant land all around the city. And because of the current zoning, you can't just go and build on those houses, right? So building materials are different now. The ways in which we build homes is different now. The technology is different. And so the current zoning is not compatible with the current type of buildings that we kind of need and that we want and that developers are willing to build in those areas. So changing these requirements for R2 zoning or residential area zoning is going to be important, because you can have infill housing now. You can take some of these vacant lots and you can build single family homes on them. As Malachi was mentioning, you can build three family duplexes now. And that's going to create population density within our neighborhoods. It's going to give people the opportunity to live in the neighborhoods, places, new homes where you can move into neighborhoods, right? Which is important because we know that the housing stock in Detroit is aging. So these types of policy changes are meant to sort of move our communities forward. And people have been talking a long time about wanting to develop in the neighborhoods and about wanting to bring some of this stuff into the neighborhoods and make them look prettier and have more homes there and places where people can actually live in the communities, right? And so, and we're not really talking about like huge apartment complexes, right? We're talking about duplexes and triplexes where people can have space for their families, as well as be a part of a community. So I think that this type of policy change is really important because it's looking to fill up some of the vacant lots in our neighborhoods and bring more beautification and bring more places for people to live with families.
All right. So in that whole perspective and scope, we really think about like how these communities are like beginning to shift. This was brought up in the Detroit Next episode that I am uplifting with so many of the different developers, Richard Hosey, Sonia Mays, and also Chase Crantrell, of what it takes to like enter into this discussion from that lens of building and development, and really like how the communities may shift. This is something that you may see around Detroit, like where you'll see like a new development and an older home like kind of on the same block, and then that leveling things out. Before we transition out of this point, I guess I want to just get what you guys' feedback as far as like what are people saying when they see this, because I know I've noticed this, and you know, how empowering is that to like the current homeowner, as they may say, like, you know, as property values rise, it can impact taxes. But just what's the feedback of a lot of people when they speak to this? Malachi, I don't know if you got a take, or Tamesa, you know, what have you been hearing in reference to this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting that the transit community is on board with this, and there's kind of an alignment of public policy people that have been pushing for zoning reform and Transit Riders United, Transportation Riders United. I always get their name messed up. True, as we know them as more commonly. They're a big supporter of this as well. So the idea that denser housing will reduce prices because you just have an increase of supply there that kind of pushes back against some of the forces that are raising rental rates and just general housing rates, and is great on its own, but like the transit dimension of that is an interesting wrinkle. So we've been talking on the show for a while about different things the council's been doing to update zoning rules. They've downzoned in a few cases former industrial sites, and they're kind of upzoning, I guess you could call it, here to put more housing in smaller districts too. So looking at it in that perspective, it's kind of a reflection of the city responding to the changes that have been happening. It's interesting to hear you talk to Mesa about development or demolition on a lot of these R2 properties, and have left a lot of these sites vacant now. And I think that needs to definitely be acknowledged too, that we've torn down a lot of property in this city, and now we have the much tougher business of putting something in its place. So
all right, in that same scope, I don't know if you'd like to add, Tamesa, as you sometimes will go to different establishments throughout the district, but in it, I know you're noticing some of the new development. What's that take? What's that feel been like? And what have you heard in reference to this?
Yeah, so in terms of new development, I think we do want new development, but from what I've heard from some people, it's like we want developers to come in and respect the look and feel of the neighborhood that we're already in, right? So you talked about demolition, we talked about home ownership in these neighborhoods. So even if we have a lot of vacant lots, there's still in a lot of cases homeowners over there. And so if development is going to come in, then we want to make sure that they are respecting the tenor of the neighborhood and how the homes look and things of that nature. Because I have heard of people saying, all of this new development, it looks like Lego blocks. It looks, futuristic. It doesn't fit with our neighborhood, right? And people, especially our older residents, don't like that. They don't want that to kind of change how their neighborhood looks. So that's one thing that I've heard. But then also with this, as we talk about demolition, as we talk about, putting stuff back where there used to be things, with these kinds of things, you can rebuild areas where there's like, you go to these blocks and there's nothing over there. Right, you go to these blocks, like some places on the east side, some places in other parts of the city, out in the neighborhoods, you'll go and there'll be no homes on the block, right? And so you can now, if this rezoning is going to happen, you can now sort of rebuild these neighborhoods where there once was something, that we know there was something there, but people left and the homes sort of, they got demolished by the city, and now we can sort of replenish that or redo that. And so I think that's a really important point too, is that we can rebuild in those areas where there was nothing, where there was something before, but now there's nothing. And I think that that's a good point. But we do want to make sure as we're going in, we respect the neighborhood if there are neighbors over there. So those would be the 2 points that I've actually kind of heard about.
Well, definitely people do talk about the design and the look of it all, but as you say, development is big. And when we talk big development, Uniroyal development debate. The Pistons are planning to bring back the Sparks, and it's also having some question. Council backs plan despite concerns over lack of transparency. Letitia Johnson, council member, spoke a lot to that, includes public amenities, tennis, sailing, youth facilities. This was a site that for years was great property, and I know it was a lot of discussion on like the cleanup of what happened over there, but this hit the hearts and minds of a lot of Detroiters at one point in time. Definitely a big sports town, and the WNBA is making a lot more waves now in this own facility. That's unique because a lot of WNBA teams play in the NBA stadium, but here nor there. Malachi, what has been the discussion in reference to this? Like since the beginning, we know that a lot of this development kind of goes into like the larger scale development. What will the city provide those moving forward with this project, and how will it be empowered? Let's get your perspective on this.
Yeah, so nothing is officially happening at this site yet, although the Pistons a few months ago basically pitched a development plan as part of its bid to bring a WNBA team back to Detroit to use that Uniroyal site as like a multi-sports complex, a practice facility and headquarters for the WNBA team, and maybe adding some other amenities alongside that. The Uniroyal site along the river is just west of the bridge to Belle Isle. You'll notice it if you're driving along Jefferson. It's like where the buildings stop, and then there's like a big open space for, I don't know, probably about 200 yards or so across. It for a long time was the proposed site of a housing and office and retail development planned by the bus Jerome Bettis and his partners, but that fell apart over the years. And just at the end of last year, I think it was, the council formally terminated the development plan that had been reserved for that site. So it is available. It's owned by the city. It is polluted somewhat. I don't know that there's been a recent environmental study done, but part of the challenge with the Jerome Bettis's group was who was going to pay for the environmental cleanup there. This was before, I think, some of the bigger brownfield tax breaks were written into state law. So there might be more opportunity for that here, but it was the site of, folks probably remember Uniroyal tires, the big tire alongside the highway when you're coming back from the airport. So you can imagine there's some significant contamination there at one point. What's interesting about this, the council basically passed a resolution, a letter saying we support what the Pistons want to do here, and we have a couple of requests of what could be included. They have not formally received a development plan, which is why Councilmember Johnson voted against this, and this is in her district. And she basically said, I don't know anything about what they actually want to do. I've just seen news reports like everybody else. And so without actually knowing what the plan is, I can't really vouch for it. But Councilmember Benson basically argues that returning the WNBA kind of hinges on transforming this site, and is advocating for including youth facilities like some tennis courts, a track and field facility, sailing, and like rowing facilities as well, and making this kind of a community site in addition to what the Pistons want to do there. So it's a symbolic, signifier that the council's on board with, generally what the Pistons have been talking about, but it's kind of unclear what the actual plan for the site is. And, moving forward, there will, need council authorization to do things. There will probably need tax breaks to do whatever they end up doing here. And so, this is a signal that the council will be a partner in that, but there are definitely more votes to come before anything, concrete happens.
Well, definitely. I guess I just really want your perspective on this, Tamesa, as you've definitely been in council chambers when other developments, especially dealing with sports teams, but more so the people backing these sports teams, do exist. This is a little bit different as it's welcoming in that franchise, similar to everything that's happening with the football club stadium, and a lot of people speaking to that. What's your perspective on this?
Yeah, I mean, Detroit is a sports town, so I get it. I get the enthusiasm. But as you mentioned, other developments, this is a real shift because I was at council when they were doing the future of health development with Henry Ford and the Pistons and Michigan State University. And the idea of giving Tom Gores a tax break was not well received by the community. So I don't know. I don't know what the people are going to be saying about this. I know that the public hearing hasn't happened yet. And so I'll be interested in hearing what those kind of comments are, and if people will feel better about this particular development than they felt about the other development that was going to involve the Pistons. I know that was a housing development that was being talked about during the future of health debate. And this is more of a sports complex, so I'll be interested in seeing what people are saying about that. But I know that the idea of giving billionaires such as Tom Gores, I think he's a billionaire, huge tax abatements is going to be something that people talk about. And then the other thing is the environmental remediation of this site. I wonder, how that's going to be done, if it's going to be done, if the bus, Mr. Bettis was not able to complete that, and if it's so involved, and if there's a lot of things that have to happen, how long is it going to take for that environmental remediation to be done? Is he going to get a brownfield tax abatement for that? And of course, if you guys know about brownfield tax abatements, they're all about giving you a tax break because you're going to clean up an environmentally hazardous site, such as the Uniroyal site would be, because you got rubber, you have the plant, the factory, and all that stuff that was there. So that would be my main issue, is if we're really gung-ho about this and passionate about it, how long is it going to take for it to actually be remediated? How long is it going to take for something to actually happen here? And is the community going to be on board, given that there will most definitely probably need to be tax incentives provided? And there was already a debate about the same developer getting a tax abatement, and people did not like it. So that would be my perspective.
Well, definitely people are always asking questions about like anything going to some of the more wealthy and well-to-do people around Metro Detroit, and given that consideration and resources are so scarce, abatements, as people know, it's not necessarily direct cash, but it's taking away the cash flow of what would come to the city for some of the projects and places that are, some of the most lucrative, or heightening the most attention into that. So when we talk about residents and civic duty, we also have a new ombudsman, Sherry Gay-Dagnogo. She is accepted and voted on and approved by the city council for this position. It's a 10-year position. Replaces Bruce Simpson. As we know, big into a lot of different things in Detroit. Sherry is, as we know, she's actually been one of the guests here on Detroit is Different, and public comment, talking a whole lot about different shifts, is on the school board currently, but will be stepping down from that position, which will be another, voted upon from the Board of Education, DPSCD. Sherry was in the running with many other candidates, but won this piece. Malachi, I don't know if you want to add anything. I can definitely say that I reached out. She was very excited and looking to do like something more formally, more than likely after the election. But Malachi, what you want to share on this one?
Yeah, I mean, Sherry's definitely a well-known figure here. She served in the legislature. She's been very active in local affairs. Is currently serving on the school board, and will have to resign her post to become ombudsman. But this is a really significant position. It's a 10-year appointment, and is in, it's an investigative body. Basically, it handles citizen complaints against the government. So it's a really impactful role. It says a lot that people who came down to speak on her behalf, like the superintendent Viti, members of the boards of police commissioners, Wendell Anthony, and others came and vouched for hers too. So it'll be interesting to see what the ombudsman is digging into and investigating in the years to come. It's kind of a more overlooked office, I think, but potentially a pretty impactful one. So.
Mm-hmm. And I think that her stepping into this role will heighten a lot of other eyes on it, as she's active in a lot of things community-based. Tamesa, this role of the ombudsman, kind of like, I know most of my life, it was, I think, the 211 number, like things that aren't necessarily a 911 emergency, but you definitely want it addressed. That was something to flow through, and also kind of like a Supreme Court justice, because it's not in that cycle of running every 4 years. This 10-year appointment kind of gives some autonomy as far as like how things can be done in certain ways. What's that policy take on this position? And give some of that scope, Tamesa.
Yeah, I don't think we talk about the ombudsman enough. I think the ombudsman is really important. I think people should know that you have an ombudsman in your city that you can go to for problems. So basically, the ombudsman is a problem solver, right? They're a person who, if you have a constituent complaint, you can call your city council person or you can call the ombudsman. They can investigate on your behalf if you have a problem with the city department. They can, investigate. They can look into that for you. Like DPW did something on your street, your sidewalks are messed up. Waste management didn't pick up my trash. Can somebody please contact waste management? So I think it's really important to know that there is that extra layer of, support at the city level that you can go to. And then it's like you said, they are not a traditionally elected official. They are in a position with a 10-year appointment. They have a little bit more autonomy. They have their own office on the first floor of the KMAC, so you can go in and ask your questions as well. And so I think it's important, and for Sherry Gay-Dagnogo to be in that position, from what I know of her, she is a very loud voice, a big advocate for people, for human beings, for safety, for making sure that people are doing what they say that they're going to do. And so you need a person like that in the office of the ombudsman, because they're going to be ones that are calling out the issues. They're going to be the ones speaking on behalf of the people, whoever calls their office with a complaint. So you need someone like that in that position who's going to be willing to go the extra mile. And so I hope that that's the kind of ombudsman that she will be. And I believe that she will. And so I think it's really important for people to understand, like, the office of the ombudsman is there. They try to solve problems for you, and the person that's in that office is going to be responsible for doing that. And I think that there is a good person in the space now. And I just hope that people respond well to her, and I hope she responds well to the people, and I hope that the office is used in the way that it should be used.
Most definitely. And that kind of closes out public comment for today, but we're going to keep this thing rolling. It's a lot more politically that's coming down the line, and different votes of some things that have been tabled. And we're going to see what that's tabled kind of comes to life in the rest of this year, as a lot of eyes are on this election. But along with the election, there's still some things that matters the city council will be tackling. With that, Khary Frazier, Detroit is different. Malachi, talk to the people.
Go to bridgedetroit.com to subscribe for free to our newsletters. This one comes out on Wednesday. There's always things in there that we don't get to. So if you're looking for extra detail on what the council is up to this week, that's your best place to go. Also, subscribe to Detroit Next. We are continuing with our interviews of local folks about different issues. We just did an episode about small business development in the city. Mary Sheffield is coming on in early October, so we will have another in-depth interview with her about her plans for mayor, and we're hoping to get Solomon Kinlock on as well to talk about his mayoral campaign. And we are, I think, scheduling we definitely are scheduling interviews with city council candidates as well. Bryce is talking to a few this week, I know, so stay tuned for that as well.
All right. Also, with that, Tamesa, let the people know what's happening with We Own Everything.
Yeah, We Own Everything is busy. Just came back from the Congressional Black Caucus. It was a very eventful week, lots of things going on. But then also, now that I'm back in the city, I am going to be busy as well, because on Saturday, October 4th, I'm having a meet and greet at the Moondog Cafe with Donovan McKinney, who, as you guys know, is running for United States Congress in Michigan's 13th congressional district against Sri Tanadar. So we'll be having a meet and greet for him. People can come out and just sort of hear about his platform, see who he is if you don't know him already. He's a great guy. He's very down to earth. I've talked to him on a number of occasions. So I hope that the community will come out and meet him and see what he's all about. And then after that, next week, I'm having not one, but two political education workshops over at the Live 6 home base. We're going to be talking about this upcoming election. We're going to be talking about what the city council does, what the mayor does, so that we will be armed with information as we go into this municipal election. So just come out if you want to learn more. I've done a couple of these before in the past, and they always are responded to very well by the community, and people are always saying, when's the next one? When's the next one? So there'll be two in 1 week. So if you can't come to the first one on Tuesday, the 7th, you can come to the second one on Thursday, the 9th, and vice versa. So I hope to see you guys out.
Definitely. And with that, peace be. You're watching Public Comment every Thursdays at 8 a.m. the live stream. Detroit is different, and Bridge Detroit. Local politics of Detroit.